Hello students, this is Professor McDermott with your video recap of our Module 1 discussions. I'm also going to have some very important announcements at the end of this video, but we'll start with the recap. Just stay tuned to the end, please. Group 1 had a document by a man named Frank Meyer. He's an interesting fellow. He was involved in the buffalo hunts of the 1870s, and then many years later, when he was about 90 years old, he wrote down his memories in a book. And this excerpt from his book is called "We Killed the Golden Goose." And I asked Group 1, first of all, why did Frank Meyer say "we killed the golden goose"? What did that mean? And in the answer posted by your chair, Nick Arzola, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Multiple people in our group stated that the buffalo was referred to as the golden goose because of the profit made from it. All of the money made from killing the buffalo made the people somewhat greedy. Over the course of 7 years, the population of the buffalo declined dramatically, hence the phrase "killed the golden goose," meaning that they had overhunted the animal that provided them their wealth. And I want to compliment Kalani also for picking up on the reference Meyer was making to one of the Grimm brothers' fairy tales about the golden goose. Yes, I think that was what he had in mind. In other words, the greed of the buffalo hunters caused them to destroy the very thing that was their livelihood, and the Indians' livelihood as well. The second question, why does Meyer say the buffalo hunters were wasteful? And here's your group's answer. We all came to an agreement that the buffalo runners were careless at first. We also have evidence from the text when it says, in 1874, for instance, every hide that reached market represented 3 or 4 buffalo killed. The pelts harvested could have been damaged or rotten by the time they made it to the market. Also in the reading, it talks about how they only harvested the pelts from the cows and just killed the bulls for no reason. So yes, the hunters were wasteful. And that killing the cows is very significant because those are, of course, the female buffalo. And they selectively targeted the cows because their hide was softer and easier to work with. And of course, that had a devastating effect on the population of the buffalo and their ability to reproduce. Meanwhile, they were just shooting the bulls, the males, for fun and leaving their corpses to rot. Hence the catastrophic decline in the buffalo population. Finally, I asked whether they thought this account by Meyer seemed truthful, or did Meyer seem to have his own agenda? And this is something we should always be aware of as historians as we read these documents. What biases might this author have that are influencing his or her presentation of the facts? And when this particular document, you have the case where he's 90 years old and he's remembering things that happened a long time ago, so that might make us suspect whether his memory is really accurate. But as you all pointed out, he does provide a lot of statistics. The article really has the ring of truth, and as a few people, including Sherry, Sandra, and Kalani, pointed out, really in this article, Meyer is making himself look bad. He's saying that I was involved in this event that was incredibly stupid, this wanton destruction of the buffalo. And that in itself, in a way, argues for the truthfulness of this. If he was going to lie, you would think he would lie to make himself look good, not stupid. So excellent points, Group 1. Let's move on to Group 2. They had Richard Pratt, the founder and headmaster of the Carlisle Indian School. And the title of this piece, very provocative, "Kill the Indian and Save the Man." Kill the Indian and save the man. Those are Pratt's words. So I asked Group 2, what did this mean? And in the answer that Lakin Davis posted for the group, here's what you came up with. By killing the Indian, his customs, language, identity, beliefs, and lifestyle are stripped and replaced with the American lifestyle. The Indian no longer possesses his own person, but instead lives by the way of the white man. The white man indoctrinates the Indian to believe that his way of life is the right and only way. Killing the Indian does not mean to actually kill the Indian man, but instead means to kill his customs and culture. And that's exactly what Pratt has in mind. In fact, he believes, to be fair to him, he believes that killing the Indian's culture is the only way to save the Indians' lives. He believes that if the Indian culture is allowed to persist, that eventually the Indians will be destroyed. And so he believes he's helping them by trying to root out their culture through his Indian school. And I asked further what Pratt makes a contrast between the way the federal government had treated Indians and the way that it was treating free African Americans after the Civil War. And here again, I think you got it right on the button. Essentially, the Indians were segregated on reservations, as you pointed out, and therefore they couldn't assimilate to mainstream American culture, whereas free African Americans, even though initially, and as you pointed out, the assimilation wasn't perfect because of racism and discrimination, still African Americans spoke English. Nearly all of them were Christians, and they had been interacting with white people on a day-to-day basis for hundreds of years. So they had become integrated into American culture to a large extent. But and Pratt sees that as the norm, whereas the Indians have been treated as a special case and shunted off and segregated away from mainstream American society. And Pratt asks, how do you expect them to become Americans if this reservation system continues? So, excellent. Let's move on to group 3. The author was an Indian woman named Zikalasa. Her American name was Gertrude Bonnet. Describing her experiences at an Indian school as a child. And at the beginning, she talks about why she wanted to go to the school. And you brought this out very nicely, McLean, in your post. I feel as if Zikalasa wanted to go east to the Indian school because her siblings went before her. Then when the pale-faced people came to her house and were talking about how people can eat all of the apples they please and ride on the iron train to different places, that made her desire to go to the Indian school even more badly. Another thought is that as a child, some children are rebellious and do the opposite of their parents, even though the parents know what is best for their child. So Zikalasa's mother was trying to talk her out of it, and she said, do not listen to the pale faces. Their words are sweet, but their deeds are bitter. But being a child, Zikalasa didn't listen. She had heard stories of great apple trees where you could pick all the apples you wanted and eat them, and she really wanted to ride on the iron horse, that is the railroad. And so finally she talked her mother into it. But when she got to the school, she was in for a big culture shock, especially when the teachers came to cut off her long hair. And this really freaked Zikalasa out. And Kristen, you did an excellent job of explaining why. According to Zikalasa's writing, there were only 2 reasons why a person of the Dakota tribe would have short hair. One reason is because their hair would be cut as a symbol of mourning, and the other reason had much more shameful connotations. If a warrior was not skilled enough to evade capture, their enemies would shingle their hair. Zikalasa described these people as cowards. To allow her hair to be shingled meant in her mind that she was weak and cowardly. It meant that this school, which represented the wonderful unknown, was actually a sort of prison where she was a captive, and the people who were supposed to take care of her were in fact her captors. That is a great insight. I had never actually thought about it. I've read this text dozens of times, and that had never occurred to me. So thank you for that. But Zikalasa stayed at the school, got her degree, and then even went on and went to a mainstream American college. And so I asked, did you think Zikalasa benefited at all from being at the Indian school, or was it a totally negative experience? Well, you had a healthy disagreement among the group. Some people thought it was totally negative, others thought it was somewhat positive. And certainly it was positive, very much in the sense that she got an education, and of course we wouldn't be reading writings by Zikalasa in the year 2017 had she not persevered and gotten her education. But Tara, you made a very eloquent point. You explained that the reason why she chose to stay in the white man's world and attend college rather than go home to the reservation was that once she had adjusted to the school, she was, quote, stranded between 2 worlds and at home in neither. And I absolutely couldn't put it any better. that in a sense she had changed and had assimilated somewhat to the white culture, but that she could never really be at home in either world. And that's the predicament of people that move between two cultures often. So, all right, overall, all groups, I thought you did a good job. And the chairs, you also did a nice job. And I would like to see even more discussion on the focus threads. So after you make your initial posts, then you'll be able to see everyone else's posts. Read those posts and immediately get on the focus threads and talk about where you agree and disagree with other people's posts and work your way towards an answer. All right, announcements. There's some very important documents posted in Module 2, including the instructions for your 3 written assignments. The first phase of that is due at the end of Module 3, so please read those instructions carefully. Also, the study guide for your exam, your first exam, which will take place at the end of Module 3, is posted there in Module 2. And because the exam will have an essay section, I've posted a short video called How to Write a Good Exam Essay to help you with that. So please also use those materials as well. Speaking of your exam, I had a really middle-aged moment. And out of all the paperwork and bureaucratic stuff I have to file, forgot to file a form I was supposed to in order to have these exams proctored. And so at this point, it's actually illegal for me to give you a proctored exam, which means your 3 exams will not be proctored. You can take them on your own computers, and I will provide you with the passwords just before the exam period starts so that you can take them on your own computers. Now, of course, I trust you all not to cheat. I'm sure you're honorable and upstanding folks. I'll be sending out further guidelines about the first exam as we get closer to the time. Finally, some people were alarmed because when you look at the gradebook now for the grades I posted for the self-introduction, you'll see an exclamation point next to the grade with the word dropped. No, that does not mean you were dropped from the course. The gradebook is set up to drop the 5 lowest discussion grades throughout the semester, and because that was the first grade, of course it's the lowest up to this point, even if it was a good grade, and so the D2L thinks it has to drop it. But you'll see as the course goes on that really only the lowest grades will be dropped at the end of the semester. So, all right, chairs for Module 2. Shanice Anderson from Group 1, Shuana Furlow for Group 2, Dion Mathis for Group 3. Initial posts are due by Tuesday, January 24th if you want to have a chance at full credit. Then the focus discussions will go on till January 30th when your answers need to be posted. You'll have 2 discussion questions this time on the issue of Gilded Age labor, and each group will have 1 document to read. All right, that's it. Please let me know if you have any questions. Look forward to these Module 2 discussions.